Welcome back to our Food System Change Congress. This afternoon, we will explore the options of open source knowledge in general. And yeah, imagine a school where there's no teacher, but a lot of highly skilled and motivated people that want to share their knowledge. And in order to learn, they even go directly to the place where this knowledge can be applied. So I think this is what I would describe a perfect learning environment. And this is also exactly the concept behind agroecology schools and open source agriculture that will be presented in this session today. And so I'm very pleased to have with us today Andrea Ferrante. He's from the Scuola Campesina Apps in Italy. Then also Severine von Tscharner Fleming from Farmhack from the US. Yeah, for an international movement of Farmhack. And our expert for our final discussion will be Ramona Duminicioiu. She's from the Eco-Rurales Association in Romania and also active in La Via Campesina in Europe. And yeah, so I would like to start with a presentation about the agroecology schools. And so Andrea, it is your turn. The spotlight is on you.
Thank you very much. It's a very big pleasure to be with you today, and thank you to organize this incredible event with so many interesting people. And it's my real pleasure to be today with Ramona and Severine also. So it's thank you very much that we started in this good way, I think. So I will introduce myself. First of all, I'm an agroecologist, more than 20 years of experience in my family farm, now in a cooperative, and working all the time, let's say, to support farmers' organization in Italy with the organic movement and around the world with the food sovereignty movement. So long experience from the field level, but also international level, especially with the international institutions that are dealing with food and agriculture. Because the idea is that we need to raise our voice where the global governance in food and agriculture is discussed. So this is my personal background and also long time in Via Campesina and as the by far the largest peasant movement in the world. So we want to talk today, and I will present very fast what is the experience of the agroecology schools around the world, because Scuola Campesina is built on the root of this movement, that it's a very strong movement around the world, where indeed for the first time ever, we try to totally change the idea of knowledge and the transmission of knowledge and how this knowledge can be shared. So for too many years, let's say, around the farming activities after, let's say, Second World War II, this process where the knowledge is not anymore at farm level, but the knowledge is in academia, in the scientific research center, it's somewhere else, in the private company, in the seeds company, it's somewhere else, that had a terrible effect on the peasant and in general on the food producers community. With this idea that we don't have the knowledge is somewhere else. And this had produced a terrible effect on the food systems, because indeed we passed from a moment where the knowledge was at the farm level, and so all the knowledge was there to think in a way that the resilience, that sustainability, that the future generation can produce on that land because it's our land. And now we arrive with new technology, new technique, where this relation between you and your land, you and your environment, you and your society, you and your community is not there anymore. Even worse, they try to cut every single relation, circular relation in the community. And this has brought, especially with the agri-industrial model, to a model that is totally unsustainable. It's not centered on the knowledge of the producers, has an incredible impact on the environment and so on. So we need to react. We need to find a way to react. And the way to react is to recognize the food producers' knowledge, the fisher folks, the farmers, the peasants, the pastoralists, the nomads, the indigenous people knowledge, what we call traditional knowledge, as it is something old. No, it's the knowledge of the future also, because it's the knowledge that brings biodiversity, agriculture biodiversity, that now everyone is shouting all over the world, say, where is agriculture biodiversity? Where this knowledge preserve agriculture biodiversity. This knowledge make your soil more fertile and there is more organic matter. This knowledge, not the knowledge that has brought hundreds of tons of chemical fertilizer and brought desertification in our soils. So this is clear that the agroecology school start from the idea that we have a knowledge, we need to share this knowledge, and we use all the methodology, starting from Paulo Freire methodology, where the sharing of knowledge is the way the knowledge is transferred. And this is extremely important. We have a circular way to make knowledge. A circular way to make knowledge is extremely important. It's the way that we need, and indeed in dialogue with all the other knowledge, with academia, with research. We don't say that there is no other knowledge. And we are in continuous dialogue. And we will see also after how much we need to continue to have dialogue with other kind of knowledge. So we need to challenge, first of all, this idea that we didn't have the knowledge, but we have the knowledge, and we need to be respected for this knowledge. And this means that you have to change totally the way you interact with academia, with the other center of knowledge. Reciprocity, reconnaissance of your knowledge is central, and it's key. And this is also because we need to have back our role in the society. Because if you don't have knowledge, you don't have a role in the society. But a farmer, a pastoralist, is a center of knowledge. So he has a central role in the society. And this is extremely important, because when we are talking about youth and agriculture, if we don't give the idea that we are a center of knowledge, and to be a farmer, you have to have a great knowledge, well, people will not be interested. But thanks God, it's what is happening. It's what is happening. And the agroecology school are doing that. So Scuola Campesina is linked to that. In that sense, there is already at European level a fantastic network that is supported by European Coordination Via Campesina, the European Knowledge Network in that sense, and we need to work more and more on that. Indeed, it's difficult because this is vocational trainings. There is no funding for us. This has to be out-organized. You need to build projects. You need to challenge the European Union institution. You need to challenge your local authorities. You need to challenge also the foundation to support you. But it's something that is really central in any food system model that want to be sustainable in the future. And indeed, how you start. If you want to start an agroecology school, you need to start from your community. You need to be rooted in your context. Scuola Campesina is rooted in a biodistrict. A biodistrict is a territory where the farmers, the organic farmers, with the local authorities, the municipality, have decided that that territory has to have a sustainable development. And a sustainable development where the interests of the farmers, the rights of the farmers, agroecology is key and central. But it's not only agroecology, it's also the waste management, it's the renewable energy, is how we address the life in that territory. So a school, an agroecology school, has to have its own feet well rooted in its community. And it's extremely important because from that knowledge, from that system of knowledge, we can start a sharing of knowledge. And this is extremely important. And we need to keep that always in mind when we want to start our agroecology school. But indeed, we need also to use, because sharing till 1 year ago was meeting people, but we need to use also new technologies, because sharing knowledge can be done in millions of, and we need to think that we can use for our purpose digital tools. And you will see afterwards also with Farmhack experience, we have millions of experience where digitalization, if it's under our control, if it is something that we can control, if it is a way to better organize our data and our knowledge, we can use it. And we need to use more and more new innovation in that sense, and we can do that. Indeed, an agroecology school need absolutely also a legal framework. It's extremely important, especially here in Europe, not all over the world, but here in Europe, that you set a structure. That can be a non-profit organization, for sure, a very simple one, but it's extremely important. A very, very extremely simple one. But you can do, in that sense, something on which you can build on your territory, your autonomy, you are recognized, although you are in this informal training. But it's extremely important that people recognize that you are a central actor of a training system. So in that sense, it's extremely important also to have a legal framework. And indeed, an agroecology school, and this is really our experience from Scuola Campesina, is that in every single moment, we bring the local to global and the global to local. What does it mean? That our experience, our knowledge, our sharing is something that has to influence the global food and agriculture governance system. We don't want to keep this without any capacity to advocate, to influence also the international process. And indeed, for example, we have exactly a focus on that online training to show how our local experience can influence the global governance on food and agriculture. But at the same time, very often you can use interesting tools that are being agreed at the international level. I make the most famous example, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other agricultural workers that has been agreed by the General Assembly of the UN, but we need it to use in our farm, in our territory, in our region, in our municipality. We need to bring those documents back to the earth, back to where we work. So this is extremely important that we do that. And we need to have always in mind that an agroecology school is an agent that changes the society, because agroecology itself is not only, it is never something that doesn't change the society. Agroecology is a way to implement food sovereignty in our territory, and this is why we have a very strong impact on our society. So it's an important actor of changing your society in agroecology school. And indeed, as I said before, we need also to challenge what is new around us. And as I said before, yes, we can use digitalization for our purpose, but digitalization in agriculture today is not good at all. Digitalization in agriculture is a tool extremely important to extract our knowledge, is a tool that is already in practice on the seed sector with the sequenciation of the genome, that it's just taking away all the genes that are linked to agricultural biodiversity, that is there thanks to the work of generation and generation of farmers. So on that, we need to do work, we need to react, we need to defend our knowledge, we need to protect our knowledge, and we need to have also, and I come back to the fact that we have dialogue with other knowledge, we need to talk with software engineers, we need to talk with lawyers, we need to build alliance with people that have the right food in their mind. They have a clear idea of what is food sovereignty, and they are our ally to build a movement that will take our knowledge at the center of our food system and keep our knowledge as the only way that make sustainability rights and a future for the young generation, for the new generation in agriculture, a way to go in our future in the food system. So thank you very much. I hope that I've been exactly in our 15 minutes, and I hope to have the opportunity to share with you in the next hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this very uplifting speech and all your contribution to this topic. I would now suggest that Severine von Tscharner Fleming will present her project on Farmhack. Severine, are you there?
I'm on safe driving mode. Well, I'm trying to figure out how to get on safe driving mode.
Nice. Okay, now.
Here I am.
Go there.
I'm not even driving. So my name is Severine, and I'm coming to you right now from Kansas in the United States. In a field called the Praxis. Was founded 8 years ago at the MIT, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And it grew out of a spontaneous collaborative of farmers and technologists from the community called Greenhorns and the community called National Young Farmers Coalition, both of which were sturgeon young people who are here. Dorn, who's one of our leaders, his farm is in New Hampshire. He grows grains, he grows animals, he grows perennials, he grows a mixture of crops, silvopasture, grazing animals, and he uses some of the principles of Farmhack are very easy to see. Operating on a smaller scale, a family scale, we are enhancing the diversity. We have tools that will enhance the ecological health of our farms. So small is beautiful, and in our events, which we've had now, I think 32 events around the world, it's always about an exchange between the farmers, an exchange between those people who are passionate to drive forward the discourse and the mechanics of agroecological tools for harvest, tools for planting, tools for transport, tools for monitoring the greenhouse, even the informal decisions that we make, what kind of recycling of trash that we use on our farms to get started with small pigs. Here you see, this is the Army recruitment banner being reused to raise small piglets in a cold climate. We have discovered that it's not only about meetings between those who are designing and developing these tools, it's also about becoming familiar with the attitude and the community process of exchanging and getting familiar with each other and getting familiar between the different allies who are working together on the tool. Next slide. So obviously, as young farmers, a big issue is land access. So because land access is often rented, or it's an intervention that is limited by capital, limitations of capital rarely much drive the design process for the tools. And the tools are, you will see, most of them oriented around what people who are renting land can farm, which is vegetables. A big emphasis in the Farmhack community is on vegetable gardening, and we're shared in that regard with the Québécois, the Atelier Paysan in France, and the CAP in Quebec. Also very big focus on market gardening and market vegetables. So here we are, healing, finding opportunity, discovering which types of equipment we can use to clean the vegetables, cheaper methodologies for tillage. Next slide. Where people who are volunteers are adding information, videos, schematics, designs, tools, can add on and suggest their own iterations or their own design evolution. These are different groups who have shops inside of the Farmhack platform. So different organizations around the US who each have a certain number of tools which they're kind of perpetuating. Next slide. And in this way, we're creating a context for kind of an observatory so that more and more of us can see each other horizontally across space and time. And we can see the inquiry of others and see the challenges of others and move forward the problems that we face. Of course, in order to have a next phase of Farmhack, it would be a more useful context to be inside a socialism that valued healing of the land, and not inside a hyper-capitalism that was committed to extraction of the land. We're in a phase now with Farmhack trying to find allies internationally to build a robust platform that can also be shared across other countries. We're limited now because the metal and the centimeters versus inches and even the thickness of our steel is different from what Andrea has and what the Québécois have and what the Africans have. So in order to become more universal and more useful to one another, campesino a campesino, across the world, north and south, east and west, we would like to find in the next year our partners to evolve our platform and overcome these minor details of globalization and share more fully between each other. Next slide. So here you see that there are many kinds of tools, many kinds of work. Next slide. You know, a major evolution in the project is, of course, also in legal forms such as land tenure. More and more we have leasing and sharing an open source culture around land, and we have a bunch of people who are very good on their computers who have just moved to the country because of COVID. In the US, we have a major movement of people out of the cities. What an opportunity for us to work together, those who feed and those who click. Thank you very much. Those who click, will you please work with us, and work with us, especially evolving new forms, not only our tools, but also the way that we share land, the way that we heal land, the way that we install agroecological hedges, connectivity, lines of relationship for the landscape, where the birds can flock, where the insects can breed, where we can bring biodiversity and hydrologic repair onto private property. Wow. Deconstructing the grid that has poisoned the functioning of our living landscape. This is a big work. We need a lot of people. Next slide. I hope that you'll come and join. I hope that you'll come and work with us, and I look forward to the dialogue. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for these impressive insights, Severine. Um, I think I missed to ask our audience to ask you questions. You can still do this. And meanwhile, we will have a chat with Ramona. And yeah, nice to have you, Ramona. And I would like to hear from you about your project. I know you're involved in many things, but you wanted to talk today about peasant seeds and agroecological knowledge systems. So yeah, let's hear from you.
Thank you so much. I prepared a little something, so I'm going to share. Oh, sorry. I'm going to share my screen. Just a little something to organize my thoughts. So I'm going to talk to you generally about what has been, how is agroecology really in the field in Romania? What is really our experience in the ground? And I'm going to also give as an example what we're doing in our association, what has been done in the past decade. Well, for us, we are a peasant organization. We have more than 14,000 members. We work at national level. We have members everywhere in the country. Our members are generally small and very small peasants, peasant farmers who are usually marginalized by public policies, who are invisible for the economy and also for the decision makers. And we've been pushing really hard the doors and the channels of communication to try to be better reflected in public policies. Because yeah, we do represent some of the most vulnerable and poor people involved in the food production system. For us, agroecology is mainly two big axes. Of course, agroecology is something very complex, and every group and every person can define depending also on the national context that they're living. But for us, agroecology means, first of all, practices which produce innovation from generation to generation. It involves also knowledge. We produce a lot of knowledge and the data, especially data, which is really important. Data which has not been ever monetized, commodified until the private sector started to push for that. And also it means education. It means that all of this knowledge, all of this practice have to be transferred to the communities, to the people around us in our communities from generation to generation, and so on and so forth. And it also means the other important axis is about the political formation. Yeah, it's about how we get organized to defend our model of production, and which involves defending our means of production, the natural resources that we are using as means of production, and also our knowledge. But also not only the model of production itself, but also our actual right to participate in decision making, to shape the future of agriculture through public policies, through support measures, public support measures, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to get a little bit into the detail of what these practices mean. So Romania is a country of peasants. This is peasants. It's probably, I don't want to exaggerate, but it's probably the most peasant country we have in the geographical Europe, which actually goes beyond the European Union. 46% of the population lives in rural areas. And in Romania, we count about 4.7 million active peasants, which represent about 40% of the totality of all peasants in the European Union. So it's still, our rural areas are still living organisms that host agroecological systems. And there are several very important elements about this. Andrea explained very well how about knowledge and what agroecology means. He went into the details of the different elements of agroecology. I'm just going to underline a few that are very currently living in our country. First and foremost, the main transfer of knowledge that we have it's the one that is going between in the farm successions, in the, or households, better said, successions between generations, the older generations to the younger generation. This transfer of knowledge is not something that is very pedagogical, that is transferred through books. It's transferred through the actual work, through the actual experience of the young people side by side, working and learning and improving the practices together with the older generations. And as we have the rural areas so populated, this actual transfer of knowledge still exists and it works. We are counting on it to learn more about the traditional and the agroecological practices. And in Romania, for this reason, for the fact that we have such a rich transfer of knowledge, projects that try to replace these natural mechanisms are not always necessary. We also have another extremely important element. It's the cooperation, which goes at many levels. The cooperation to find labor, which has been problematic, I would say. It's been very much affected by the migration wave that is actually an effect of poverty and lack of support for real development in rural areas from our government. So because of migration, you know, when there is seasons of work, for example, now we are in the middle of the harvest season, and for greens, vegetables, and there are a lot of Romanians who go travel, dozens of thousands of Romanians who go travel to Germany to work in the industrial farms mainly, but also perhaps also organic farms. So there is this flux of labor that is affecting this natural cooperation that exists in local communities, in the villages in Romania. But to go over this, the sharing of genetic resources, this is again something that is happening naturally. People share their seeds, their genetic, their seeding materials, whether they are fruit trees, wine, or different kind of seeding materials, and also animals, chickens, you know, you name it, you got it. Whatever you find in a traditional household, people exchange in order to enrich their genetic resources, and yeah, to make sure they have healthy plants, healthy animals, and so on. It helps a lot. And they also share tools and means of production. They share tractors, they share you know, less mechanized tools, because yeah, because of poverty, but also because of this is how it always worked. So it's a cooperation system that is naturally exists. And there's also another part that refers to the economy. The agroecological existing system, it's actually strengthening the local economy. The fact that it's employing local labor, it's really important. Peasants are collectively the largest employer in Romania. And people have, the employment system in these communities is very respectful generally. You know, you need to be able to employ on a long term, so you have to respect your workers because they're your neighbors. And people actually employ today their neighbors for harvest, and the next day they might be employed by their neighbors to go harvest their neighbors' crops. So yeah, it's a sharing of benefits and needs, very reciprocal, and so on. Agroecology also integrates food and animal markets that again strengthen the local economy, and also it includes infrastructure investments made by the local producers, by the peasants themselves, to have access to water, to build roads, to build fences, to manage their properties. That again comes back to strengthen the local economy. I'm going to go a bit faster because I understand I don't want to go over time, so I will be happy to answer to questions. I just wanted to give you the example that we've been working on for the past 10 years. Ecoruralis has a whole program that is dedicated to the production and the spread of local varieties of seeds. And we also produce with that knowledge, and we try to influence the decision makers. We work, as I said, with only with local varieties, with local or so-called also local populations or heterogeneous material. We do have a working group of members with seed producers from 16 regions of Romania. Together in this working group, we take decisions, we get organized, we produce seeds together, and I mean also individually, our members, and we support their access to market. We organize collectively a seed distribution in Romania, but also in Republic of Moldova, in solidarity with peasants from across the border. And also we in this program that we've been developed, we also try to do advocacy with the main focus on implementing the right to seeds through the UN Declaration of the Rights of Peasants, and also the International Treaty for Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, specifically Article 9, which is farmers' rights to seeds. I give you here some small images of activities. You see here pictures from seeds exchanges that have been organized by our members. There is also pictures from food baskets and different food products that have been produced with local seed varieties from our program by food producers who we have members who are organized in a food production system that delivers and that developed even more during the COVID because of the need for food to be delivered home. So there are lots of producers from dozens of towns, or from not dozens of towns, dozens of villages who deliver to different towns in Romania. So the seed distribution program last year, for example, our seed distribution started right when the COVID crisis started. We managed to distribute seeds in an emergency way to 3,035 families. Yeah, most of the seeds go to families who own small plots of land and who work small plots of land. Most of beneficiaries of our seeds were women. 61% were women, and only about 38% of the beneficiaries were men. Yeah, this is all from us, and yeah, thank you so much. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for this wide range of topics and your engagement. And I think right now we don't have questions, but I think they will come. So please feel free to ask your questions. And in the meantime, I think I would just ask you, what do you think, how can we scale up agroecology schools in Europe? Because I think you mentioned interesting developments. Andrea, you mentioned already the network, the European Agroecology Knowledge Network, and also Ramona, you talked about Romanians that go for work to Germany. And so I think there's somehow there's an exchange, but not in the way that we would like it. So what is your idea? How could we transport this knowledge in the way that it has an impact? Whoever would like to answer.
First, please.
You want to go first, Andrea?
No, I said you first. I will follow, as you prefer.
Well, sure. I could say share a few reflections. We have to do everything. everything we've been doing until now. And I think we're very motivated by this crisis to increase our efforts. This crisis has been a moment, a terrible moment that has been taken advantage of by the private sector, by multinational companies who accelerated their agenda on digitalization. And Andrea spoke about the dangers we're facing from digitalizing genetic information, data, and grabbing our natural resources for profit and limiting even more our human rights as food producers. So there are real threats, increasing threats for us. This crisis also represented, uh, you know, marginalization of the smallholders, of the small food producers. We don't have the same kind of access. It's not like we ever had very good access to dialogue with our governments, but now we find ourselves, in a corner, more invisible, more marginalized. We see that our governments have been using double standards in imposing all of these restriction measures to control COVID, which we understand very well and we've been supporting right from the beginning. But all around Europe, governments have been trying or succeeding to shut down local markets and maintaining open the supermarkets for absolutely no reason, because in fact, local markets are just as well or even better respecting the social distancing standards, and they could have been open if the interest of our governments was really to take the most honest and the best control measures to control the COVID. They should have maintained the open without even questioning, without even attempting to close the local markets. We've been fighting really hard against this, not only in Romania, but also our colleagues from many countries around Europe. So all of these new obstacles and all of these new aggravations of our historic marginalization need to mobilize us even further to promote agroecology as the best solution for all of us. It's a solution not only for the strengthening of the local economy, which is the most important. You need local economy when global economy shows its limitations and vulnerability and crashes around us. You need agroecology to respond to. We need a response from agriculture, to fight against the climate crisis, to fight against the climate change, which is real, which has been, on the top of the political agendas until the COVID crisis started, and which needs to come back again as one of the most important emergencies of our humanity. So yeah, we have agroecology in our hands. We need to mainstream it and visibilize it. We are happy as a peasant movement, not only in Eco-Ruralis, but also across Europe in the European coordination Via Campesina, to share our experiences from the ground, which differ from country to country because we have different contexts and different people with different experiences. And we're happy to put it to use and build on them. We are hoping to build on them more public support, but also a change in the public policies. We need to make it happen because it's for the benefit of us all. Thank you. Sorry for being longer.
Ramona, I think that we need a cultural shift. Beside what has been said now, we really need a cultural shift because unfortunately, and I think and I thank you for organizing this big forum because I saw that there are some academicians. But if you talk with the research centers, if you talk with the academicians, it's so rare that they recognize our knowledge, or even impossible. And there is this lack of communication because if we don't make this radical cultural shift, that we are owning a very important knowledge, And this, I repeat, is essential if we want to involve young generation in agriculture. Because if we continue to say that farmers is the work of the past, and we don't recognize that to be a peasant today is one of the most innovative profession in the world, because it's, unlike many others, it's one of the few activities that is not only economic, there is a lot of relations, of feelings. The quality of life is so much better because there is this element essential of feelings, your relation with Mother Earth, with the environment, your capacity to relate with the natural elements. At the same time, you have skill in economy, you are skill in technicians, technical, and you have always an approach that looks at 100 years in front of you. You never look for 6 months. There is no program for 6 months in that sense. So, and this is why it's so important and so keen. But we need to make this cultural shift, because otherwise we will not recognize that. And this has to be done. And this is why we need alliance. I really repeat that we need to build alliance, and only with this alliance, that this means also recognizing the importance of the rural territories, the capacity those two rural territories to speak with the urban areas, but we need to recognize and acknowledge that this is central for the society for tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. To come back to this once more, when we really look at how to make this knowledge more accessible, how are your ideas about linking with the educational sector, for example, all the formations that are done for agriculturists, they don't really, they don't really implement the, not even the organic knowledge or organic farming knowledge, or at least in Germany. So I think there is also a huge amount of work to do. What do you think about it?
I start, Ramona, this, but Severine is still there, anyhow. Indeed, but it's clear when I talk about cultural shift is because all the education system is framed in the context of the industrial agriculture, from the kindergarten till the university. So it is clear that you will never understand what is agroecology in the formal education system. And this is a common problem that we have everywhere, no? Then for sure we have nice professors, one school there, one institution there, and we try to make of those exceptions something huge, big, and we try to make miracles, because we do miracles in that sense. But if you look to the vast majority of the institutions, and worst, most of these institutions are going through a process of privatization. So it will be even worse in the future. Look, for example, the reform of the education system in Hungary, of the agriculture system, through all those systems that will be in some private foundation, and that will be the end of any kind of autonomy of the training and education system. So this is why vocational training as the agroecology school has to start to have bridges with the formal training educational system, and those bridges has to have the power to change what are the educational system today, because we need that. If we don't have that, we cannot think that agroecology can really develop in the future in Europe, but for sure also in the other part of the world.
Just to emphasize, I've been driving across the United States for, I think now 4,000 miles of driving across the countryside and speaking with young farmers and older farmers about the impact of climate change in our super industrialized agricultural landscapes and the crisis that is unfolding for the health of soil, for the loss of soil, flooding, drought, fires, price crisis, and on top of the crisis, which is that 70% of the farmland in the US is owned by people who are in their 70s. And we have a real extreme need to intervene in the destiny of our landscapes. We have a really extreme need to modify the systems of production here. And I just want to make sure that the transmission is clear that we have a farming system in crisis. Now, maybe it's producing a lot of cheap food and wasting a lot of cheap food. But in the US during COVID, we have had extreme hunger. We have had all of the food banks have doubled, tripled, and quadrupled the need for people who are hungry. So the question of how do we get more people, more diverse people, more young people involved in these places which have become sites of industrial extraction and which have become extremely vacant of young people, extremely vacant of small business. You know, this is a multi-generational project just to get the correct density of humans back in relationship with the landscape and to do the needed repairs, to bring diversity back and to bring resilience back into these systems which have become so fragile.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a good point to address, of course, the young people. This is what it's about. And I'm wondering if, yeah, you already knew of each other. Andrea and Ramona, did you know of this Farmhack? I'm sure you did, but how maybe can this movement of yeah, that is a bit more linked to the urban population. I assume, I'm not really sure, but somehow I think these hacking and this is another way of yeah, subculture maybe that is influenced or that influenced this farm hack movement. So can this be yeah, a first step to address a new group of people that was not so much involved in farming? Or maybe you three can answer to this.
Maybe I could say a few words and then my colleagues continue. Well, we've heard before about this concept farm hack, and to my knowledge, there are some initiatives also part of this broader platform in Europe as well. And of course, I think we felt maybe more than ever in this COVID crisis that we need to strengthen the connection between the people from the cities and the people from the rural areas, because we need each other. We cannot count, and we shouldn't count on the global market to provide us with food, because it failed us. It created obesity. It created unnecessary climate problems. You know, it led to food speculation. It destroyed local markets. It destroyed, you know, many of the valuable elements of agroecology. And we need to try to rebuild or where is necessary, or to go back to these connections between people in the rural and urban areas, because nobody wants to eat unhealthy food. Everybody wants healthy, quality food that is nutritious, that is diverse, that is culturally appropriate. And you know, we are there for this. We, the small food producers, the peasants, we are all about producing this kind of food. And you know, we need to find ways to protect the local markets, or to build local markets where we don't have them, you know, with the support of governments, or despite the lack of support of our governments. We need to use all the resources we have. We are smart people. We have the knowledge. We can ask each other if we want to access more knowledge. and we need to get to action. And yeah, the more local food networks, the better for absolutely everybody, for the health of all the people who need to produce, you know, who need to have good immunity systems, who need to grow healthy, and we need to support the food, you know, the right kind of food producers, the agroecological, especially small scale food producers. Thanks. And by the way, there is a small question in the Q&A section. I responded in written. Let me know if you want me to make a few remarks on this.
Thank you. Yeah, later.
I let Severine answer before.
Well, just to say, in the US, we're recognizing that the structures that we have had in the last 50 years of the industrialization of our farming system have led to concentration, industrialization, and consolidation of power, monopolies, monocultures, and all of the consequences of those. And if we want meaningful change, I echo what Andrea is saying. It's not just one little program and one little exception and one nice market that will do it. We need to think about regulation. We need to think about reform, and we need to think about the role of the state in that commitment. So, you know, now we're looking at the movement of private equity, carbon markets, billions of dollars of speculation, billionaires and hedge funds buying land, vertically controlling production systems, trains, mills, I mean, in order for the structure of the ecosystem, which feeds us, to evolve, it will require the role of the state. And I think in the US, we have finally a sane person running our administration, thank God. And we have a coalition of young and older farmers, I think, who are realizing this is our moment to be making big demands. And I think the climate crisis gives us a very useful frame to offer our work, and not to say only that we have been diminished, that we have been, it's accurate to say that we have been diminished by these policies in the past, but it is also accurate to say that we have the knowledge and we have the physical commitment, stamina, purpose, drive, and momentum of life on this earth, and agriculture for thousands of years on this earth, that can survive climate change. And so not only to be begging, but to be offering ourselves to say, dear human civilization, we're here to farm. We'd like to farm in the ways that we'll be able to keep farming, and let us get to work, make the necessary reforms. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, Andrea, go on.
No, I will be short, extremely short, but indeed we have a revolution in the sense that we have experiencing, especially before with the economic crisis, but also even more now during the this COVID that has just, let's say, make it even more clear than before what was happening, an incredible move back to the rural area. So we have a lot of people that wants to go back. The problem is that a young farmer has to, in front of him, so many challenges that it's impossible. So what Severine says is it's exactly what the problem is. We need the state that make policies on that, because we have the people. We want to regenerate agriculture with our knowledge, but there are barriers that are incredible. For sure, thanks God, Ramona has given us the idea of a total different panorama, because thanks God, still we have a strong rural society in Romania, but this is not the case in many other countries. And when we are experiencing, we are trying to move back, then there are barriers because the agri-industrial model don't want people that think in agriculture, don't want happy farmers. So they don't want those people back. It will be a problem for them. So we needed to do this fight, and we need to use all the space at the international, at national, at the European, at the regional level. We need to do this fight everywhere.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think we have also some more practical questions, but one has been resoluted in the chat already. Yeah, maybe if you would like to add something about it's really about how to farm a piece of land that is poor in humidity and has a sandy soil. Maybe if you would like to add some of your agroecological experience in this.
Yeah, go and work for another farmer who has sandy soil with low moisture, and he will or she will teach you.
Good idea, yes. How would this person find this farmer?
Which country are they in?
I think he's from Portugal.
Well, we have very good members. European Coordination Via Campesina has very good members in Portugal. The National Confederation of Small Farmers, CNA, Confederação Nacional Português, something like that. I will share the link in the chat. They have members everywhere in Portugal, and I'm sure that our friend can find the neighbor, because indeed I agree with Severine. The best knowledge is the local knowledge, right? So don't go, look for information out there on the other side of the planet when you actually have, for sure, you just need to look for the information. And indeed, he raised a good and very important issue, which is the drought. We are living globally a pedological drought. I don't know if this is the right English word, but we are dealing with aggravated drought, and it's very important to focus on the practices that maintain water resources in the soil. And actually, I think that the small answer that was given in the chat is very good. It's important to do everything you can to cover the soil, whether you do it with mulching or you do it with the greens that you only cultivate there to keep good shadow and not allow water to evaporate. So yeah, it's one of the most important practices we need to own as a peasant.
Thank you. There's another short question. Do you know of any networking knowledge hub in East Africa?
In East Africa, there are the Kenyan Peasant Farmers Organization that are the member of La Via Campesina that have extremely good work on agroecology, indeed. And the second, but not of less importance, is the African Food Sovereignty Alliance that has its own base. I think the headquarters is in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, but it's an incredible, so you can find it very easily, AFSA, African Food Sovereignty Alliance, that it's the best network, I think, in that area that is working on agroecology. If you come from Kenya, for sure the Kenyan peasant movement is at Kenyan level one of the most active in that sense.
Thank you. I think we have a question from Martin. If you would like to speak out, I could let you contribute directly. So you just need to raise your hand. Okay, that's not the case. So I will just ask the question. I think he is referring to what we just stretched, but it is about how to attract young people in a political way. So what does it need for young farmers to be be attracted to get into agriculture? Yeah, whoever would like to start. Ramona?
Sure. Well, it's really complicated, I have to say, because agriculture in general and advocacy work is not very sexy, and it's not, something that is easily drawing people onto. So, especially coming from a country where we have quite a young democracy, we had the totalitarist regime until 1989. And we've been experiencing with a sort of transition kind of process towards democracy that we never feel it accomplished. And in terms of social movements, we don't have a long history at all of people fighting for their rights. Actually, our parents, I come from a generation of, let's say, younger generation, where our parents always told us, why are you raising your voice? You need to be careful. Please don't don't criticize too much the government and so on. So it's very, very difficult, especially in the rural areas. People have not been ever given the tools to fight for their rights. They've always fought when it was absolutely life and death situations, and they just couldn't bear, and they had nothing left to lose. So we're trying to build this consciousness, this political consciousness, by organizing political trainings. Unfortunately, the COVID did no favor to us, because for peasants in general working online, it's very, very difficult, because the internet infrastructure is not so good in rural areas, because we don't have the tools necessarily. But also in terms of knowledge, how to actually use the phone, how to connect online, it's really challenging. So it slowed us down, our political training, but we are trying to find new ways. It's very important to do this political training and to explain to us how the decisions are made, to clarify, our political objectives, what do we want, and to ultimately fight for them. But we need to build a bigger base of people, of political leaders in the rural countryside, to be able to make the big changes we need to happen. Because as Andrea and Severine said, we cannot really work on pilot projects. We need to have systemic and systematic change for the needs we have. So yeah, I hope that answered partially. And I just wanted to mention, I see here a comment from a very nice lady who mentions a nice project. It's called Farm Train. It's a cooperation project between different organizations from Eastern Europe and also from Western Europe, which makes it very rich. It's on sharing knowledge and the trainings for a younger generation who wants to go work in the rural countryside. Yeah, and there's a link also there in the chat. Please check it out. It's a very nice project.
As a young one, I would say also that in 2008, and we had an economic crisis. Between the next 4 years, we had a doubling of young people in agriculture, according to the census that was taken in the US government. Also in COVID, all the young people thrown out of school, having to leave the school, we had an overwhelming demand to go and work on farms. I think each time we have a crisis, it helps those young ones remember and have a premonition that there is another world that is possible for them than sitting in a city working on a desk, and that in fact there are wonderful ways to spend your life, mostly outside and mostly not wearing a mask and mostly not in the Zoom cage. So I would say the recruitment is natural, and as part of a movement of young people in agriculture in the US, I'll say we have more young blood coming than we can handle. We don't have the infrastructure to handle all the interests that we have. We need to build support structures. We need to give, in the US, we ask for relief from educational debt. in Europe, you have much stronger support for young people in agriculture than we do in the US, actually. So I look forward to being in the marketing department when the structure has been changed and when we really need to do the marketing and outreach to the teenagers and say, okay, now it's time, you can come. It's a safe place to make a career. But at this time, you have to be kind of half crazy to want to be a farmer because it's so difficult.
Yes, I think that we all share this idea that it's too difficult. We can make also a kind of a joke, you know. One of the professions that it's more difficult to start is to be a notarius. But indeed, in Europe, it's much more difficult to start a farm than being a notarius. So this is the fact. There are too many obstacles and there is no willing. I repeat, there is no real willing because we want less farmer. So why should youth should start to farm? We need a model in the agro-industrial model. We need a model with few farmers, some agricultural workers, but not people that can think and have knowledge, because they just need to apply a technology that, as it's a capitalist technology, has to use less manpower as possible. And we don't need people that use their mind. So it's really difficult. It's really difficult because the agro-industrial model don't need the young farmer. So you are going against a structure, and all the common agriculture policy in Europe is supporting agro-industrial model. And yes, I understand Severine when she said, at least in Europe you have something, but we know very well that all the support schemes for young farmers are irrelevant in economic terms if we think of what is the common agriculture policy in Europe. Because if we think that we have 60 billion euros every year spent in remunerating the owner of land, because this is the common agriculture policy, and you take how much is for the support of the young farmers, then it's ridiculous. It's less, much less than 1%. It's irrelevant. And this is really makes you understand that there is no will. There is absolutely no will to bring young forces, young farmers, and I repeat, farmers, people with knowledge, people that want to enjoy their work.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, there are many perspectives on this topic, and I would now like to listen to our participants. Johanna Herigel, if you would like to speak up, I would give you now the allowance.
Thank you. Thanks for all the contributions, and I think there were many interesting points for me. I come more from an urban movement in Zurich, and we are really seeing that we have a huge challenge with regards to urban gardening and urban farming. That on the one hand side, we have some CSA schemes. They are always struggling to find good gardeners and farmers. On the other side, we have many young, really motivated people, but who in the formal educational system don't receive the sort of education that they would need to then come and actually be a gardener and a farmer in these urban schemes. So it's a huge lack on the one hand. Maybe we are a bit in a lucky situation in Zurich that we have some of the formal education training centers. They do some courses on agroecology. And even then, we are realizing that it's a very abstract sort of education. So what we're learning out of this is that it's great to be in connection with these educational formal systems, but what we also really need is a more practice-based training. And what I think all of you have mentioned, it's very much a peer-to-peer learning. But then we get into a big problem, right? Because there are people who want to do the training. Somehow we have a demand for people getting this training, because then they can, they can go open a CSA and so on. But how do we actually get funding for this training? So this for us is a big challenge. And I was wondering if you have thoughts on this. And at the same time, I was realizing maybe in the entire discussion, I am not sure, I'm always a bit uneasy about this urban-rural divide. It's maybe also something I reproduce myself sometimes. As I was talking right now, I was mainly mentioning urban things. And if I look at where in Switzerland we see interesting trainings, it's not all, but a lot of this peer-to-peer learning is around urban regions, I would say. But yeah, I was thinking, and this is a very open thinking, right? How can we get out of this divide and learn more from one another? But also, what experiences do you have with regards to how we can actually find financing for this new sort of education? Because already today, the people who do the peer-to-peer learning, they say the resources are extremely limited. And here I also mean time, the time they want to learn from one another, but very often in these projects, specific projects, then you don't have time to go and talk to the next person who's doing something similar. And that's really a challenge we are facing here. So I was wondering if you have recommendations on that.
Well, indeed, when we are talking of those kind of training, we are in the big box of the adult training, these vocational trainings. And we need to look on that, because there are some resources there. What is changing totally is the methodology, because usually those structures exist. Adult training, I think also in Switzerland, is there, but they are very traditional. So how we challenge those traditional systems of trainings is really one of the big effort to do. I don't think the problem is the money, because the money is there, but how we can try to change the politics on education, on adult training, and then make experience like yours something that can access to those resources. Because this is the contradiction, that there is not a lack of resources, but there is a lack of resources for what you want to do. And this is a political fight. It's really a political fight. And this is where the coalition between the urban and rural movement can play an important role. And so building those bridges is extremely important to have this cultural and political shift.
Thank you. Can I quickly react on this?
Yeah, sure.
It's a very interesting point, because actually we are not thinking mainly in our daily activities of having this sort of struggle, because we also know, at least in Switzerland, that those who are really influencing the formal education, adult education, are a lot of, I would say, traditional farmers who are not in favor of this sort of knowledge. So this is a long fight, which has already been a huge struggle for organic farming. They succeeded to some degree, and even from the window organic farming, they really say it was partial what they succeeded. And so when we are facing this today, we are also really asking ourselves, where do we put our energy mainly? So of course it's a crucial struggle, but the results will come many years down. So it's always, many strategies at the same time. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, in the next step, I would ask Kuban, if you would like to, yeah, give us your speech or what you would like to contribute. I will give you the allowance now.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Ramona. Well, let me first say that this real world experiences have been extremely interesting and delightful to hear all the way from the US. I think what Andrea said in his last comment on political power and is very, very true. The whole thing is actually political. You're talking to deaf ears when you're asking for changes in culture and things like that. The whole thing is about political change. As we all know, the current is going down the other way. So the topic of alliances here is critical, as Andrea had mentioned in his first speech, I think. In transition theory, as you know, alliances are transitionary power pacts to achieve a certain end, and they may change in time. And I think this transition that we're talking about in food is as big almost as the Victorian, banning of child labor, or the movement towards urban hygiene and things like that. So it's huge change that we're going to be demanding, and we need a full battery of political actors and alliances behind us in this change. I think we might be looking at the last comment on actually territorializing the food movement. Putting together urban and rural is probably one of the most important, let's say, batteries behind this movement. And I think there's a whole big movement towards urban food systems, which wants to localize food supply chains and shorten all these chains. And I think the other thing that we need to do is to probably align our political aims with those of, for example, a public health movement. This would be a very interesting thing to do, because food is really intimately connected with health. The other thing would be something like like the air quality movement in the mid 20th century, which actually cleaned up the air in most of European cities. So we need to look at this as a political power struggle, and we need to look in detail to the political economy of the food and agriculture sector. But it's been really nice to hear all these experiences, and I look forward to comments from especially Andrea regarding urban-rural alliances, territorial look at the food transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who would like to answer this? Oh, we can also just
well, one other frame to add to the discourse that's very strong and is inferred in a conversation about open source, and that is the commons, the conceptual framework of the commons. The commons being the atmosphere we share, our cultural production, our languages, the commons, which are the bounded territories in which we operate. And I think the commons is also our common fate. And so one of the politics that is described in this commons discourse is of unity within our common fate, our common plight, our common destiny, which is a different politics than has been defining these discourse areas. And I don't want to go on too long, but I would just refer to that. I've been reading a lot of Bruno Latour, and it's making a lot of sense to be all on the same team, to find unity with all, because it's not enough to be a splinter group at the moment.
Yeah, thank you.
I would love to take the point of Kuban on the alliance with the public health movement, and maybe now more than ever with the pandemic, this is extremely clear for us, the two, how are they in the same, and this is why I think that this alliance has to stop what we continue to reiterate as those sectoral policies. The common agriculture policy is a sectoral policy that it's outdated and it's impossible to reform. When we talk about food system and nutrition, we are talking on something different. We are talking about territories with millions of elements. We are not talking about agriculture anymore only. So it's clear, and also the peasant itself is not only someone that produces food, is much more multidimensional his role in the society. And we need to avoid also to translate everything in economical service. We need to be very accurate on that. I'm very worried when we talk about trade, carbon trade. This is not good for us. Those CO2 credits are not good for us. This is another tool to privatize land and to make land a big business, but it's not a way to build resilient food systems. And in that sense, an alliance with movement like the public health movement tend to understand to all of us that we are not talking only of producing food. We are talking on something much more complex, much more different, and common agriculture policy is not anymore a tool that can be reformed and can give any answer. Because just to tell to Joanna, in principle, in the rural development programs of the common agriculture policy, I know that you are in Switzerland, but there is also training. And it could be resources for those kind of trainings that we do, but they are totally co-opted by those corporations that makes training for the agro-industrial model. So that policy is something that will never help us for the future.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe we need to extend our discussion time about 5 minutes, because I think there are some interesting questions coming up. And one short question is about a possible cooperation in a digital way. And I think it's not your real name, Psycho Slave. Would you like to speak up to explain what is your question? Then you need to raise your hand. Otherwise, I will just... Okay. He says he needs another minute. Here he is. Okay. So I give you the permission now.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, we hear you.
Great. Well, I was kicked out for a bit of time, so I don't know what was the question. I asked 2 questions actually. One about the Wikimedia movement and the Open Food Network, and if there are already existing links between the 2 movements, and because I'm bright new in Open Food Networks, and I've been a contributor in Wikimedia project for more than 15 years. And I would like to know what the Wikimedia movement can do to help the open and food networks regarding sharing knowledge, as the topic was raised by someone well, more than 15 years. I would like to know what the Wikimedia have all disappeared from my interface, and it was about languages, because I'm also an Esperanto speaker, and someone spoke about languages, and I wanted to know if there are people that use Esperanto within your network. To came with another question. They have all disappeared from my interface, and it
Okay, now you disappeared, but maybe we can start with the first question. I don't know, the Open Food Network will be in the next session, but if you would like to answer this question about the Wikimedia support, yeah, please do so.
Severine, you want to start? Well, the Open Food Network is one of those experiences that are changing a bit the landscape of what is happening. And indeed, it's extremely important and interesting, because it's a way where we use digitalization to support our, for example, access to local market. So indeed, we need more and more those kind of tools controlled by us. I repeat and underline, tools that are controlled by us, because this is what we need. And we need also to be careful what is open and what is not open. Because sometimes some data collection that we do, it cannot be totally open, because then somebody else can get our data. So we need to be really careful on that. I give you an example. We are in an area where there is a lot of hazelnuts production, and we have a lot of problem with insect. And so we are making monitoring system to insect between producers. But this data cannot go in the hands of Ferrero, that it's buying 80% of our hazelnuts, because they will use this data to make their trade contract more favorable for them. So not all the data can be open source, and not everything can be shared with everybody. So this is something extremely delicate that we need to address. And for sure, there are experiences that we need to open as much as possible. There are other things that we need to keep the control on that, to avoid that strong actor of the food chain will take advantage of our work. And indeed, we need to find a new system of alliance. And in this system of alliance, the Wikimedia movement can be extremely useful for us. No, I don't know anyone working with Esperanto in our movement, to be honest.
Great, thank you very much for all that answers. And well, I can give you something really relevant to develop what you said, because I'm not familiar enough with the topics you just pointed out. And I understand the problem you exposed, and it's more, it's not about not wanting to release that information to the wider public, but to protect your own future as a network against other actors that might be, how could I say that, aggressive or a menace for you, right? So I don't have, unfortunately, a great solution that will, at least not without thinking a lot about it, but that's a very interesting topic. How it, maybe could we have both of it? That is, giving knowledge to the general public under some free license. I mean, by free license, I mean especially copyleft license. That is, you can always give to the public, and through the law that was right, that were not fought like that. So, but through the monopoly you can get through copyrights or other IP things, you can use something like copyleft to turn it upside down and in fact make it, okay, we put that in the commons, and if you want to make derivate works from that, you have to do the same, and we could push that maybe further, so it would not exactly something that would be recognized as a free license by some companies that do so until to the zero, but that could still have this ethical spirit about keeping the commons growing and not letting a single or a few actors take it all the value out of it and trap into some legal framework that make them legally able to maintain their monopoly. I don't have a solution that we're not, but through the monopoly of her IP thing, use some to turn it. I'm very happy.
Okay, thank you very much for this contribution. I think you made a very good link to our next, our next session. So we will be talking about exactly how we can implement open source technology in agroecology. I'm so sorry that we could not answer all the questions. They came a bit late today in this session. I think we had a fruitful discussion, and we were seeing a lot of different perspectives from different countries, from rural, from urban parts of Europe. And I think, yeah, we would wrap up now, but surely we will be elaborating these topics further in the next days. And I thank you very much for being here, for participating, for your thoughts and for your engagement in your projects. And I wish you all the best for the next steps that you are taking on a way to a transition. And now I wish you a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much to everyone.
Grazie a tutti.
Bye.